Welcome to this Frogplum audiobook series. If you find these chapters helpful, remember to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next part. Feel free to share this with someone who might need encouragement today, and save the playlist so you can follow the journey start to finish. This audiobook is for education and reflection only. Now let's begin. Chapter 6. Master your emotional tone. Your message is never just the words you choose. It is the emotional signal carried underneath them. People often believe they lose influence because they said the wrong thing. In reality, they lose influence because their tone revealed something they did not intend. Desperation is one of the clearest examples. In negotiations, people may say all the right words. They may present logic. They may remain polite. And still, something feels off. The tone betrays urgency. The pacing feels rushed. The pauses disappear. The body tightens. Nothing in the sentence says desperation, but everything in the delivery does. Experienced negotiators listen for this. They are not just evaluating the proposal, they are evaluating the emotional state behind it. A steady tone signals options. A desperate tone signals dependence, and dependence weakens position immediately. This is why emotional tone must be audited before speech, not during it. You describe something many professionals learn the hard way. When pressure rises, the instinct is to fill space, to speak faster, to explain more, to reduce silence. But silence is not what weakens you. Uncontrolled tone does. People do not judge you when you pause to collect yourself. They judge you when your voice rushes ahead of your thinking. A pause before speaking is not hesitation, it is regulation. In business and negotiation, calmness communicates leverage. It says, "I am not cornered." It says, "I have room to choose." It says, "I am not reacting." Warren Buffett is often cited for this exact reason. When questioned under pressure, he pauses, he thinks, then he answers. No apology, no urgency, no filler. That pause increases trust, not doubt. In contrast, leaders who speak immediately under pressure often leak anxiety. Their tone tightens, their words speed up, their authority drops, even if their logic is correct. Religious and philosophical traditions echo this discipline. In Islamic teachings, restraint in speech is associated with wisdom. Speaking without emotional control is seen as a failure of judgment, not strength. In Stoic philosophy, control of emotional expression was considered a prerequisite for leadership. If emotion controls the voice, it controls the outcome. Tone begins before the first word. Before speaking, there is a brief internal checkpoint that matters more than any sentence. Ask yourself silently, does my tone match my intention? Not my argument, not my logic, my intention. If the answer is no, you wait, you breathe, you slow the pace, you allow your nervous system to settle. This is not weakness, this is professionalism. People do not trust emotional speed, they trust emotional stability. In negotiations, the calmest person often has the advantage, even with fewer resources, because calm signals choice. Choice signals power. Your words may be perfect, but if your tone carries urgency, people hear risk. If your tone carries steadiness, people hear confidence. Mastering emotional tone does not mean suppressing feeling. It means preventing feeling from hijacking delivery. You can feel pressure and still speak calmly. You can feel urgency and still move slowly. You can feel challenged and still remain grounded. Tone is discipline made audible. When your tone is controlled, your presence expands. When your presence expands, people listen differently. They do not rush you. They do not push. They do not test as aggressively. They sense stability, and stability is what leadership sounds like. Chapter 7. Control pace and silence. In business, how fast you speak is often more important than how much you know. Many professionals speed up their speech when the stakes rise. In meetings, pitches, or negotiations, they talk faster to prove competence, fill silence, or avoid appearing unsure. The intention is usually positive. The result is not. Speed communicates pressure. When you speak too quickly, people sense urgency before they process meaning. Even if your ideas are strong, your delivery suggests that something is unstable. In business environments, instability reduces trust. Decision makers do not evaluate only content, they evaluate composure. A controlled pace tells the room that you are comfortable with your position. It signals that you are not chasing approval or rushing toward an outcome. This matters deeply in investor pitching, executive meetings, and negotiations where every signal is interpreted. A rushed explanation often sounds like justification. A steady explanation sounds like conviction. The words may be identical. The pace changes everything. In pitching, pace determines whether your message feels like a proposal or a defense. When founders speak too quickly, investors hear risk. When founders slow down, investors hear intention. Slowing your pace allows key points to stand on their own, instead of being buried inside a stream of words. Silence works alongside pace. Most professionals treat silence as a mistake. They rush to fill it with clarification, extra detail, or reassurance. This usually weakens their position. Silence is not empty space. It is emphasis. When you pause after a key statement, you allow your words to land. You give others time to process. More importantly, you show that you are comfortable with what you just said. In business conversations, comfort signals authority. Experienced negotiators understand this well. After stating a price, a condition, or a decision, they stop talking. They allow silence to shift pressure away from themselves. The next person who speaks often reveals more than intended. This is not manipulation. It is restraint. In meetings, silence signals that a point deserves consideration. In presentations, it separates ideas and improves clarity. In leadership conversations, it communicates confidence without aggression. Pace and silence together create structure. When you slow your pace slightly and use pauses intentionally, your message becomes easier to follow. Listeners no longer struggle to keep up. They begin to evaluate your ideas instead of your delivery. This shift is critical in business speaking because trust is built through ease. When people feel at ease listening to you, they are more likely to believe you. A practical adjustment helps here. In high-stakes situations, aim to speak slightly slower than feels natural to you. What feels slow internally usually sounds calm externally. The same applies to pauses. A pause that feels long to you often feels appropriate to the room. Most people underestimate how much space their audience needs. Controlling pace and silence does not reduce energy, it refines it. It replaces nervous momentum with deliberate presence. In business, deliberate presence is persuasive. When your pace is steady and your silence intentional, people listen differently. They interrupt less. They question with more respect. They take your words more seriously. Authority often sounds quieter than people expect. Tonight, tomorrow, practice. 1. In your next business conversation, slow your speaking pace slightly on purpose. 2. After making one important point, pause briefly before continuing. 3. Observe how the room responds during the silence. 4. Resist the urge to explain or justify immediately. 5. Let each idea fully land before moving to the next. Chapter 8. Speak powerfully in few words. Short business pitches expose weakness faster than long presentations. When you have only a few seconds to speak, there is no room to warm up, explain context, or recover from hesitation. Everything is visible immediately. Your thinking, your confidence, and your emotional state all surface at once. This is why elevator pitches are so difficult. Most people assume short pitches are easier. They are not. They are harder because they compress pressure. In business settings, especially with investors, short speaking moments carry disproportionate weight. People often decide whether they trust you before you finish your first sentence. You experience this directly. In high-stakes situations like investor interviews and angel meetings, anxiety can override preparation. Even when a pitch is written and rehearsed, the moment you are asked to deliver it, the brain shifts. Memorized language disappears. Thoughts no longer arrive in order. Words feel crowded, and time feels too small. This is not a personal flaw. It is how pressure affects recall and sequencing. Short pitches fail most often because people try to memorize language instead of understanding meaning. When stress rises, memorized sentences collapse. What remains is confusion, speed, and filler. Listeners interpret this as uncertainty, even when the idea itself is strong. This is why many business people sound less credible in short pitches than in long ones. In environments like investor rooms, cameras, or formal interviews, people are not listening only to your idea. They are listening for stability. They want to know if you can hold a clear thought under pressure. When you try to force a 30-second script, your attention splits. Part of your mind tries to remember words. Another part tries to manage nerves. The result is fragmented delivery. Authority requires integration. Strong, short-form business speaking is not about fitting more words into less time. It is about reducing your message to its core meaning. When you understand the core clearly, you do not need to remember sentences. You only need to express intent. This changes everything. Instead of thinking, "What do I say next?" you think, "What is the one thing they need to understand?" The rest becomes optional. Investors respond to this shift immediately. A short pitch delivered calmly with one clear idea feels complete even if it is brief. A rushed pitch packed with detail feels unfinished, no matter how long it lasts. The difference is not intelligence, it is clarity under pressure. Short business speaking works when you accept that you cannot say everything. You are not there to explain your entire business. You are there to establish credibility and invite interest. That invitation is emotional before it is logical. When you speak fewer words with control, people lean in. When you speak many words quickly, people pull back. This applies beyond pitching. It applies to introductions, executive updates, boardroom summaries, and any moment where time is limited and judgment is immediate. Short speaking is not about speed, it is about restraint. When you stop trying to impress and start trying to be understood, short pitches become manageable. Calm delivery completes what brevity removes. That is what authority sounds like in few words. Tonight, tomorrow. Practice. 1. Choose one business idea you often explain. 2. Reduce it to one clear sentence in your own words. 3. Practice saying it calmly, without memorizing. 4. Pause briefly after finishing the sentence. 5. Notice how the pause makes the message feel complete. Chapter 9. Choose words that carry weight. In business, people do not evaluate your vocabulary. They evaluate your certainty. Words either reduce friction or create it. In high-stakes conversations, especially pitching, leadership, and decision-making, small word choices can quietly undermine trust before logic even enters the discussion. Many professionals damage their credibility without realizing it. They use soft language to sound reasonable, flexible, or polite. Words like, "I think," "maybe," "I will check," or "it might be," often feel harmless. In business settings, they are not. These words signal hesitation. When you pitch an idea and rely on uncertain phrasing, listeners hear risk. They do not hear humility. They hear a lack of command over the subject. Even when the idea is strong, the language suggests that you are not fully anchored in it. You experience this from both sides. Earlier in your career, those words worked against you. They made you sound unsure, even when you understood the problem well. Later, when people came to you for support or investment, you noticed the same pattern from the other side of the table. When founders used vague language, it raised immediate concerns. Not because they were necessarily wrong, but because their words did not demonstrate ownership of their ideas. When questioned, their answers drifted instead of landing. At that point, the decision became difficult but necessary. In business, uncertainty in language often forces rejection. You cannot afford to invest time, money, or reputation when clarity is missing. The risk is not just the idea, it is the person's ability to navigate decisions under pressure. This does not mean people must sound rigid or arrogant. It means they must sound intentional. Words that carry weight are specific. They are limited. They reflect decisions that have already been made. Compare these two statements. "I think this could work, but I need to check a few things." We have tested this approach, and here is what it changes. The second sentence does not claim perfection. It claims grounding. In meetings, leaders who speak with weight use fewer qualifiers. They choose words that reflect responsibility. They avoid unnecessary disclaimers unless accuracy requires them. Precision builds trust because it reduces mental load. Listeners do not have to interpret what you mean. They can focus on whether they agree. This is especially important in pitching and leadership communication. Investors and executives listen for signals of control. When your language is precise, they assume your thinking is precise as well. Vague words blur accountability. Clear words define it. Choosing words that carry weight does not mean you must always have answers. It means you are deliberate about how you express what you know and what you do not. Saying, "I do not have that data yet," is stronger than, "I will check." It defines a boundary instead of hiding behind uncertainty. In business, clarity is safer than optimism. Precision is safer than politeness. When your words reflect intention, people feel steadier listening to you. They may still disagree, they may still challenge your idea, but they will not doubt whether you understand what you are talking about. That is what authority sounds like in language. Tonight, tomorrow. Practice. 1. Notice the words you use when you are unsure. 2. Identify one soft phrase you rely on often. 3. Replace it with a more precise statement of what you know. 4. Practice answering one question without qualifiers. 5. Observe how the response changes how people react to you. Chapter 10. Remove verbal weakness. Before we talk about sounding confident, we need to talk about what quietly destroys confidence in business conversations. Not big mistakes, not wrong ideas, small verbal habits. In high-stakes environments, pitching, negotiating, answering questions, even a few seconds of verbal weakness can change how people judge you, not because they are unfair, but because they are listening for stability. In business, people are not only listening to what you say, they are listening for signs that you know where you stand. One of the fastest ways credibility leaks out of a conversation is through filler sounds. Oh. Most people use these sounds to buy time. They think it helps them think. In reality, it does the opposite. Silence signals thinking. Filler signals uncertainty. There is a critical difference. When an investor, executive, or decision-maker hears repeated filler sounds, their brain makes a fast, unconscious judgment. This person is not fully grounded in what they are saying. That judgment happens even if your idea is strong, even if your numbers are right, even if you are capable. The problem is not intelligence, the problem is signal. You mentioned something important from your own experience. When you were pitching, especially under pressure, these small sounds worked against you, not because you did not know your material, but because they made you sound unfamiliar with it. And in business, sounding unfamiliar is expensive. The same thing happens when leaders face aggressive questioning. Watch any press conference closely. The moment a leader begins an answer with hesitation sounds, the tone of the exchange shifts. The audience senses instability, not weakness of character, weakness of delivery. Strong communicators do not rush to fill space. They allow silence to exist. Silence tells the listener, I am choosing my words. I am not panicking. I am not guessing. Filler sounds tell a different story. They suggest searching. They suggest internal confusion. They suggest pressure. And pressure erodes trust. There is another form of verbal weakness that often appears alongside filler words. Overcorrecting. Starting a sentence, stopping, restarting, explaining again, adjusting mid-thought. This creates the impression that you are assembling ideas in real time instead of presenting something already formed. In business, that matters. People trust leaders who sound like they have already done the thinking, not leaders who sound like they are thinking out loud. This does not mean you must answer instantly. In fact, the opposite is true. A brief pause before answering is one of the strongest signals of competence you can give. A pause says, I am not rushed. I am in control of myself. This question deserves precision. Silence costs nothing. Verbal weakness costs credibility. There is a reason experienced negotiators, executives, and investors speak less, not more. They understand that every unnecessary sound dilutes authority. Clean speech feels calm. Calm speech feels confident. Confidence earns trust. This is especially important in business settings where money, responsibility, and risk are involved. People are not just evaluating your idea, they are evaluating whether you can carry it under pressure. Removing verbal weakness does not require sounding robotic. It requires restraint. You do not need to fill space. You do not need to prove intelligence with speed. You do not need to protect yourself with noise. You need clarity, delivered cleanly. When you replace filler with silence, something changes. Your presence sharpens. Your words land with more weight. People listen differently, not because you spoke louder, but because you spoke deliberately. This is not about perfection. It is about discipline. And discipline is what separates professionals from amateurs in business communication. Tonight, tomorrow, micro practice. 1. In your next conversation, notice every time you feel the urge to fill silence. 2. Replace one filler sound with a pause instead. 3. Let the pause exist without apology. 4. Answer only after the sentence is fully formed in your mind. 5. Observe how people respond differently to your presence. You do not need more words. You need fewer, cleaner ones. That is how authority sounds when it is real. Thank you for listening. If this part helped you, make sure to subscribe, tap the notification bell, and share this audiobook with someone who might need it. We release new parts every week, along with fresh audiobooks designed to help you grow, succeed, and reach the highest version of yourself. Self-improvement becomes much easier once you understand how it works, and we're here to guide you every step of the way. See you in the next part.